The fluorescent light above my workbench flickered unsteadily as I tightened the last bolt on Mrs. Henderson's alternator. Ashford Electrical had been my life for 15 years, ever since Dad was gone and left me the business. The smell of motor oil and metal shavings filled my nostrils, familiar, comforting scents that reminded me why I loved working with my hands. My phone buzzed against the concrete floor where I'd dropped it earlier. The display showed Caroline's name, my sister. At 11:30 on a Tuesday night, this couldn't be good news. "Nate here," I answered, wiping grease from my fingers with an old shop rag. Sobbing. That's all I heard at first, raw, desperate crying that made my chest tighten. Caroline hadn't cried like this since our father's funeral. "Caroline? What's wrong?" "He told me everything." Her voice cracked between words. "Gregory, he confessed. About Renata, about the baby." The wrench slipped from my hand, clattering onto the workbench. "What about the baby?" "It's not yours, Nate. The baby Renata's carrying. It's Gregory's." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I stared at the alternator in front of me, its copper coils suddenly looking like the twisted remains of something once whole. My wife of 12 years. My sister's husband of 8, the pregnancy announcement that had filled me with joy just 3 months ago. "You sure about this?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "He broke down at dinner tonight, started crying into his meatloaf, saying he couldn't live with the guilt anymore. They've been together for almost a year." I closed my eyes and leaned against the workbench. Renata's recent behavior started making sense. The new clothes she claimed were from clearance sales, the mysterious girls' nights with her friend Sloane, the way she'd started keeping her phone face down during dinner. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I just left, packed a bag and came to Mom's. I don't know what to do, Nate. My marriage is over and yours. Mine's been over for months. I just didn't know it yet." The strange thing was, I felt relieved more than angry, like finally understanding why your car's been making that weird noise. You can't fix what you don't know is broken. "Are you okay?" Caroline asked. "I'm thinking." And I was. My mind had shifted into the same methodical mode I used when diagnosing electrical problems. Start with what you know. Test your theories, find the root cause, fix it permanently. "Don't do anything crazy, Nate." "Crazy? Caroline, I'm the most rational person you know. I'm going to handle this exactly the way it deserves to be handled." After hanging up, I stood in my garage for a long time, listening to the distant hum of traffic on Route 9. Ashford, Massachusetts, wasn't a big town. Word would spread fast once this got out. Gregory worked at the bank downtown. Renata volunteered at the girls' school. Everyone would know. But they'd know on my terms. I locked up the shop and drove home through empty streets lined with colonial houses and mature oak trees. Our neighborhood had been built in the 70s, back when people believed in things like permanent employment and lifelong marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. The house was dark except for the porch light Renata always left on. I sat in my truck for a moment, studying the place we'd called home for 8 years. White clapboard siding, black shutters, a red front door that Renata had insisted would make the house more welcoming. Inside, I found her asleep on the couch, one hand resting on her rounded belly. At 4 months pregnant, she was just starting to show. Her auburn hair spilled across the throw pillow, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married, young, beautiful, full of promise. Then I remembered Gregory's hands on that same belly, and the moment passed. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, each step creaking in a familiar pattern. Renata had been after me to fix those stairs for 2 years. Now I was glad I'd procrastinated. Some things were better left broken. The next morning, I woke before my alarm and found Renata in the kitchen, making coffee with one hand pressed to her lower back. She wore a blue maternity dress I'd never seen before. "Morning," she said without turning around. Sleep okay in the guest room? Fine. You? The baby kept me up. Active little thing. She smiled and rubbed her belly in that way pregnant women do, like they're sharing a secret with the world. I poured myself coffee and studied her face. No guilt, no nervousness, no sign that her husband's sister had just learned the truth about her pregnancy. Either Renata didn't know that Gregory had confessed, or she was a better actress than I'd given her credit for. Any plans today? I asked. Lunch with Sloane. Then I have that appointment with Dr. Morrison. Dr. Morrison, the obstetrician who'd been monitoring Renata's pregnancy, who'd probably noticed that the baby's development didn't quite match the timeline Renata had given me. Medical professionals were trained to spot inconsistencies. Mind if I come along? To the appointment? Renata's coffee mug paused halfway to her lips. Really? You've never wanted to come before? This is different. It's our first baby together. I emphasized the word our just slightly, watching her reaction. Of course it is. Whose else would it be? She laughed, but the sound was forced. But no, I think I'll go alone. You know how you get around medical stuff. I nodded and finished my coffee. Renata was right. I'd always been squeamish around doctors and hospitals, but that wasn't why she didn't want me there. At the shop, I found my employee Danny replacing brake pads on a Honda Civic. Danny Kowalski had worked for me for 3 years, ever since graduating from technical college. He was 25, earnest, and treated me like the older brother he'd never had. Boss, you look like someone stole your lunch money, he said, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Family stuff. Nothing I can't handle. The wife giving you grief again? Danny had noticed the tension between Renata and me over the past few months. He'd made a few comments about how she seemed high maintenance for an electrician's wife. At the time, I'd defended her. Now I wondered what else Danny had observed. Something like that. Hey, you know anything about DNA testing? Danny raised an eyebrow. Like for paternity? My cousin went through that mess last year, cost him $300 in his marriage. How's it work? Simple. You get a kit online or from a lab, swab the inside of your cheek, mail it in, wait a week for results. Why? Just curious. But I wasn't just curious. I was planning. That afternoon, I drove to the CVS in the next town over and bought a paternity testing kit. The pharmacist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, didn't ask questions. She probably saw men like me every day, husbands with suspicions, and the need for certainty. Back home, I hid the kit in my toolbox in the garage. Renata never touched my tools. She claimed they were too heavy and complicated, though I'd seen her handle a cordless drill just fine when she wanted to hang pictures. Over dinner, I watched her eat the salmon I'd grilled, noting how she pushed the vegetables around her plate without actually eating them. She'd been doing that a lot lately, claiming pregnancy cravings while barely touching her food. How was Dr. Morrison? I asked. Good. Everything's progressing normally. He says the baby should arrive right on schedule. When's that again? February 14th. Valentine's Day. Romantic, right? I did the math in my head. If the baby was due February 14th, conception would have been around mid-May. I remembered mid-May clearly. I'd been in Boston for a 3-day electrical contractors conference. Renata had claimed she was sick and couldn't come with me. You were sick in May, I said. Remember? That weekend I went to Boston? Renata's fork paused above her plate. Was I? I don't remember being sick. Food poisoning. You said it must have been something from that new Chinese place. Oh, right, that was awful. She resumed eating, but I noticed her hand trembling slightly. I excused myself and went to the garage, where I called the lab number printed on the DNA testing kit. A recorded message explained the process. Collect samples from all parties, mail them in the prepaid envelope, receive results within 7 business days. All parties. That meant I'd need samples from myself, Renata, and Gregory. Getting mine would be easy. Renata's wouldn't be difficult. I could collect hair from her brush or saliva from a drinking glass. Gregory's would require more creativity. The next morning, I called Caroline. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "Terrible. I haven't slept. Gregory keeps calling, but I won't answer." "Good. Don't give him the chance to explain. There's no explanation for this." "What are you going to do about Renata?" "I'm going to prove what we already know. Then I'm going to make sure everyone else knows it too." "Nate, please don't do anything that'll make this worse." "Caroline, it can't get worse. Your marriage is over. Mine's over. The only question now is how much dignity we can salvage from the wreckage." That evening, I suggested we invite Caroline and Gregory over for dinner on Saturday. "A family dinner?" Renata looked puzzled. "Why now?" "Caroline's been stressed about work. I thought it might be nice to get everyone together. Besides, we should celebrate the pregnancy with family." Renata's face brightened. She loved playing hostess, loved the opportunity to show off our home and her cooking skills. "That's sweet of you. I'll make that roast Gregory likes." The irony was perfect. She'd cook Gregory's favorite meal while carrying Gregory's child, all while sitting across from Gregory's wife and Gregory's wife's brother. If I weren't so disgusted, I might have admired the symmetry. "I'll call them tonight," I said. Caroline answered on the first ring. "Nate, I need you to do something for me. Bring Gregory to dinner on Saturday." "Are you insane? I can't even look at him." "You can and you will. Tell him you want to work things out. Tell him you're willing to forgive him if he'll come clean to everyone else." "I don't understand." "You will. Just trust me. Can you do this?" Caroline was quiet for a long moment. "What are you planning?" "Justice. The kind that sticks." Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, typical November weather for Massachusetts. I spent the morning in the garage preparing. I'd collected the DNA samples during the week, mine from a cotton swab, Renata's from her toothbrush, and Gregory's from a coffee mug he'd left at our house months ago that I'd never gotten around to washing. The samples were already in the mail, but I wouldn't have results for another 5 days. That was fine. Tonight wasn't about proof, it was about confession. Renata spent the afternoon cooking, humming to herself as she prepared Gregory's favorite pot roast with red wine sauce. She wore a new maternity dress, navy blue with white trim, and had spent extra time on her makeup. "You look beautiful," I told her and meant it. She did look beautiful. She also looked like a woman preparing to see her lover. Caroline and Gregory arrived at 6, both looking like they were attending a funeral. Caroline's eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. Gregory kept checking his phone and avoiding eye contact. "Greg?" Renata hugged him a little too long, a little too tight. "I'm so glad you could make it." Gregory's face went pale. "Thanks for having us." We gathered in the dining room, around the oak table Renata had picked out when we first moved in. She'd insisted on seating 8, for when we have children and they bring friends home. Now 4 of us sat at that table, and the children she'd imagined would never exist. The conversation was stilted, forced. Caroline picked at her food. Gregory drank too much wine. Renata chattered about baby names and nursery colors, oblivious to, or ignoring, the tension crackling around the table. "We're thinking about James for a boy," she said, cutting her roast into precise pieces. "After Nate's father." I watched Gregory's reaction. A muscle in his jaw twitched, and he set down his wine glass with unnecessary force. "That's nice," Caroline said flatly. "Or maybe Gregory, if it's a boy," Renata continued, smiling at my brother-in-law. "Such a strong name." The silence that followed was deafening. Caroline's fork clattered against her plate. Gregory's face turned the color of the wine sauce. "Renata," Gregory said quietly, "maybe we shouldn't—" "Shouldn't what?" I asked. "Discuss baby names? It's exciting news. Our first child together." Again, I emphasized the word our, watching both Gregory and Renata for reactions. Gregory looked like he might be sick. Renata's smile never wavered. "Of course," she said. "Who else's would it be?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Not the DNA results, which wouldn't arrive for days, but something I'd prepared that afternoon. Inside were printouts of text messages I'd found on Renata's phone while she was in the shower that morning. "Funny you should ask," I said, placing the envelope on the table. The envelope sat in the center of the table like a loaded weapon. I watched three faces, my wife's, my sister's, my brother-in-law's, each reflecting different shades of confusion and growing dread. "What's that?" Renata asked, her voice artificially bright. "Evidence," I said simply. "Gregory, would you like to tell everyone what you told Caroline 3 nights ago, or should I read these text messages aloud?" Gregory's wine glass slipped from his fingers, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like spilled secrets. "Nate, don't," my voice cut through his stammering. "Don't insult my intelligence with denials." Caroline was staring at Renata with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You knew. When I called you yesterday crying about my marriage, you knew exactly why Gregory had confessed." Renata's composure finally cracked. The perfect hostess mask slipped, revealing something calculating underneath. "Caroline, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly." Caroline stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "My husband has been sleeping with my sister-in-law for almost a year. My brother's wife is carrying my husband's child, and you both thought you could keep pretending everything was normal." "The baby is Nate's," Renata said, but her voice lacked conviction. I opened the envelope and pulled out the first text message. "May 15th, from Gregory's phone to yours. Can't wait to see you tonight. Tell Nate you're sick again." I looked up at Renata. "That was the night I was in Boston, the night you had food poisoning, remember?" Renata's face had gone white. "Those could be fake. Anyone can fake text messages." "May 22nd. Last night was incredible. I love feeling our baby move inside you." I set the paper down gently. "Our baby, Renata. Not my baby. Our baby." Gregory buried his face in his hands. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it or sorry you got caught." Caroline's voice was ice cold. "Both. All of it. I never meant for this to happen. Bullshit." The word came out harsher than I'd intended, but I was past caring about politeness. "You meant every bit of it. You meant every text message, every lie, every time you sat at this table and looked me in the eye while planning your next rendezvous with my wife." Renata was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streams. "Nate, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been playing house with my sister's husband while carrying his child? How you've been lying to my face for months? Or how you thought I was too stupid to figure it out? I never thought you were stupid. Then what? Too trusting? Too boring? Too blue-collar for your refined tastes?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I reached into the envelope again and pulled out a photograph, a printout from Renata's social media account. "This is from your Instagram posted 6 weeks ago. You're at the Riverside Inn, having brunch with Sloane. Except Sloane wasn't there, was she?" The photo showed Renata at a table for two, but only one plate was visible, and the angle suggested someone had been sitting across from her when the picture was taken. "Gregory was there," I continued. "You cropped him out of the photo, but you forgot about the reflection in the window behind you." I placed another printout on the table. This one was the same photo, enlarged and enhanced, showing Gregory's unmistakable profile reflected in the restaurant's window. "You're not as clever as you think you are, Renata." Caroline was studying the photographs with the intensity of a crime scene investigator. "How long have you known?" "I suspected for weeks. I knew for certain 3 days ago when you called. but I wanted proof before I did anything about it. What kind of proof? Gregory asked, finally looking up from his hands. I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. DNA testing. The samples are already at the lab. Results should arrive Wednesday. The silence that followed was complete. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to have stopped ticking. Wednesday, Renata repeated numbly. Wednesday. Then everyone will know exactly whose baby you're carrying. Gregory stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward. I need to leave. Sit down, I said quietly. I can't do this. I can't sit here and... Sit. Down. Something in my tone made him comply. He righted his chair and sat back down, looking like a man facing execution. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm and measured. Caroline, you're going to file for divorce. Take Gregory for everything he's worth. The house, the cars, the boat, his retirement fund, all of it. Caroline nodded slowly. I already called a lawyer. Good. Gregory, you're going to cooperate fully with Caroline's divorce proceedings. You're not going to contest anything. You're going to sign whatever papers she puts in front of you, and you're going to do it with gratitude that she's not demanding alimony. And if I don't? Then I'll make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of man you are. Your boss at the bank, your golf buddies, your mother. Everyone. Gregory's face crumpled. His mother was 85 years old and thought her son walked on water. The shame would destroy her. As for you, Renata, I turned to my wife. You're going to pack a bag and leave. Tonight. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You can stay with Sloan, or Gregory, or in a motel. I don't care. Nate, please, we can work this out. Couples counseling, therapy. There is no couple. There hasn't been for months. You made that choice when you decided my sister's husband was a better option than your own. Renata's tears were flowing freely now. What about the baby? What about it? It's not mine. It could be. The timing. Stop lying. I pulled out another piece of paper. This is a copy of your medical records from Dr. Morrison's office. Your due date is February 14th, which puts conception at May 17th. I was in Boston from May 15th through May 18th. You told me you were too sick to come with me. Medical records are confidential. How did you... I called the office and told them I needed the information for our insurance company. Amazing how helpful people are when they think they're doing you a favor. Gregory was staring at the medical records like they were written in a foreign language. February 14th? Valentine's Day, I said. Romantic, isn't it? Your wife will be giving birth to your child while my sister finalizes your divorce. The weight of the situation seemed to hit Gregory all at once. He doubled over like someone had punched him in the stomach. Oh God, what have I done? You've destroyed 2 marriages and created a child who will grow up knowing its father chose lust over family loyalty, Caroline said. That's what you've done. Renata was looking around the table desperately, like she was searching for an ally who didn't exist. This is insane. You're all acting like I'm some kind of monster. Aren't you? I asked. What would you call a woman who seduces her sister-in-law's husband and then lies about the paternity of the resulting child? It wasn't seduction. It just happened. Nothing just happens, Renata. You made choices. Every text message, every secret meeting, every lie you told me, those were choices. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where I'd lived for 8 years. Mrs. Patterson was walking her dog. The Hendersons were bringing in their garbage cans, normal people living normal lives, unaware that the foundation of my world had just crumbled over pot roast and red wine. I want you gone by tomorrow morning, I said without turning around. This is my house, too. Check the deed. It's in my name only. You insisted on that when we bought it, remember? For tax purposes. Another choice that had seemed smart at the time, now revealed as prophetic. When I turned back to the table, Caroline was helping herself to more wine. Gregory was staring at his reflection in the dark window. Renata was clutching her belly like she was trying to protect the baby from the conversation happening around it. "What happens after the DNA results come back?" Gregory asked. "Then everyone knows the truth. No more lies, no more pretending. Your child will know who its real father is, and so will everyone else." "And us? Caroline and me?" Caroline answered before I could. "There is no us. There hasn't been since the moment you decided my brother's wife was more appealing than your own." "I never meant—" "Don't tell me what you meant. Tell me what you did. You had an affair with my sister-in-law. You got her pregnant. You sat at this table every Sunday for months, knowing that baby wasn't Nate's, and you said nothing." Gregory's shoulders sagged. "You're right. I'm sorry isn't enough." "No, it's not." I returned to my seat and poured myself more wine. The evening wasn't going exactly as I'd planned, but it was going well enough. The truth was out. The lies were exposed. The consequences were beginning. "There's one more thing," I said. "Sloane." Renata's head snapped up. "What about Sloane?" "She's been helping you, hasn't she? Providing alibis, covering for your absences, maybe even facilitating some of your meetings with Gregory." "Sloane doesn't know anything about this." "Really? Because I have text messages between you and her too. Want me to read those aloud?" Renata's silence was confirmation enough. "I thought so. Well, Sloane's about to learn what happens to people who help destroy marriages. I'll be having a conversation with her husband tomorrow." "Nate, no. Don't drag other people into this." "I'm not dragging anyone anywhere. You did that when you involved Sloane in your affair. Actions have consequences, Renata. You're about to learn that lesson the hard way." The dinner party was over. Caroline stood first, gathering her purse and coat. "I'm going back to Mom's. Gregory, don't follow me, don't call me, don't contact me at all until you hear from my lawyer." Gregory nodded miserably. "Caroline, Save it. Whatever you were going to say, save it for someone who still cares." She left without another word, the front door closing behind her with finality. Gregory sat at the table for another few minutes, staring at the ruins of his pot roast, before finally standing. "I'll pay for everything," he said. "The baby, Caroline's lawyer fees, whatever she needs." "You'll pay for a lot more than that," I replied. "You'll pay for the rest of your life." After Gregory left, Renata and I sat alone at the table, surrounded by the detritus of our last meal, together, as husband and wife. The candles she'd lit for ambiance had burned down to stubs. The flowers she'd arranged that morning were already beginning to wilt. 12 years, she said finally. 12 years of what? Marriage? We stopped being married the first time you met Gregory in secret. I loved you once. Maybe. But you loved the idea of Gregory more. She was quiet for a long time, one hand absently rubbing her belly. What happens to us? To the baby? There is no us. As for the baby, that's between you and Gregory. I can't raise a child alone. You won't be alone. You'll have Gregory. He's the father. That comes with responsibilities. What if he doesn't want those responsibilities? I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt something that might have been pity. Then you'll learn what it means to live with the consequences of your choices. The next morning, I woke to find Renata gone. She'd taken 2 suitcases and left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter, next to a note that said simply, "I'm sorry. Sorry." As if 12 years of marriage and a lifetime of trust could be dismissed with 2 words written on the back of a grocery receipt. I called Danny and told him I'd be late to the shop. Then I drove to Sloane's house. Sloane lived in a Tudor-style house on Elm Street, the kind of neighborhood where people hired landscapers and worried about property values. Her husband, Michael, was a successful insurance agent who played golf every Saturday and believed his wife spent her Thursday evenings at book club. I rang the doorbell at 8:30 in the morning, early enough to catch them both before work, but late enough to be socially acceptable. Michael answered the door in a business suit, coffee mug in hand. Nate, what brings you by so early? I need to talk to you and Sloan. About Renata. Michael's expression shifted from friendly confusion to concern. Is everything okay? Sloan mentioned Renata was having some pregnancy complications. Something like that. Can I come in? He led me to their living room, all cream-colored furniture and abstract art. Sloan appeared a moment later in a silk robe, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Nate, what a surprise. How's Renata feeling? That depends on how you define feeling. She's probably embarrassed, guilty, and homeless. But physically, she's fine. Sloane's smile faltered. I don't understand. Sure you do. You understand perfectly. I pulled out my phone and showed them a screenshot of text messages between Sloan and Renata. May 20th. Renata to Sloan. Can you cover for me Thursday? Tell Michael you're having book club at my place. Sloan to Renata. Of course. What time should I say it ends? Renata to Sloan. Late. Gregory and I need the whole evening. The color drained from Sloane's face. Michael set down his coffee mug with a sharp click. Who's Gregory? Michael asked. My sister's husband, also the father of Renata's baby. The silence that followed was broken only by the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. Michael was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Sloan? His voice was carefully controlled. Is this true? Michael, I can explain. Is it true? Sloane's shoulders sagged. Yes. You've been helping Renata have an affair? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. I showed Michael another text message. June 3rd, Sloan to Renata. Booked you the usual room at the Riverside Inn. Told Michael I was shopping with you. This isn't a one-time favor, Michael. This is a months-long conspiracy. Michael was reading the messages with the intensity of someone reviewing a life insurance policy. How many times? I stopped counting at 15, I said. But there are more. Sloan, how could you do this? To Nate? To Caroline? To me? I was helping a friend. You were helping destroy 2 marriages. Sloane's composure finally cracked. You don't understand what it's like being married to someone who works all the time, who cares more about his business than his wife. So you decided to help your friend cheat on her husband? I decided to help her find some happiness. At the expense of everyone else's happiness, I said, including your own husband's. Michael was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. I can't believe this. My wife has been facilitating an affair. Our friends are going to find out. My clients. Your clients don't have to find out, I said, unless you want them to. Both Michael and Sloan stared at me. What do you mean? Michael asked. I mean, this can stay between us or it can become public knowledge. That's up to you. What do you want? Sloan asked. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to think about what you've done every time you look at your husband. And I want you to stay away from Renata. She's my best friend. She was your best friend. Now she's a pregnant woman who destroyed her marriage and helped destroy yours. Those friendships don't usually survive. I left them to work out their own marital problems and drove to the bank where Gregory worked. First National had been serving Ashford for 60 years, and Gregory had been their loan officer for 12. He was the kind of employee banks valued, steady, reliable, trusted with other people's money. The receptionist, a young woman named Jessica, smiled when she saw me. Mr. Ashford, are you here to see Mr. Holt? If he's available. Let me check. She picked up her phone and spoke quietly. He'll see you now. Conference room 2. Gregory was waiting for me with the door closed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his tie was crooked. What do you want? He asked. To discuss your future, or lack thereof. I told you I'd cooperate with Caroline's divorce. I'll give her whatever she wants. That's a start. but it's not enough. What else is there? Your job, for one thing. How do you think your boss would react if he knew you'd been having an affair with a client's wife? Gregory's face went white. Renata isn't a client. No, but I am. Ashford Electrical has 3 business accounts here, plus my personal banking. That makes me a client, and you've been having an affair with my wife. That's exactly how it'll look when I file a complaint with the bank's board of directors. Loan officer Gregory Holt has been conducting an inappropriate relationship with the spouse of a significant commercial client. The bank's reputation could be damaged by association. Gregory slumped in his chair. You're going to get me fired. I'm going to give you the opportunity to resign. Quietly, professionally, with a letter of recommendation that doesn't mention your extracurricular activities. And if I don't resign? Then I file the complaint, and you get fired for cause. No recommendation letter, no severance package, and a black mark on your employment record that'll follow you to every bank in Massachusetts. Gregory was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. I have a mortgage, car payments. If I lose this job, you should have thought about that before you decided my wife was more interesting than your own. When? End of the week. Tell them you've decided to pursue other opportunities. I left Gregory to contemplate his shrinking list of options and drove to the high school where Renata volunteered. She'd been helping with the drama department for 3 years, painting sets and organizing costume donations. The drama teacher, Mrs. Kellerman, was a theatrical woman in her 50s who treated every conversation like a performance. Nathaniel, how wonderful to see you. How's our dear Renata? She missed rehearsal last night. Renata won't be volunteering anymore. She's dealing with some personal issues. Oh dear, nothing serious, I hope. Serious enough? You'll need to find someone else to help with the costumes. Mrs. Kellerman's face fell. But the fall production is next week. Renata promised she'd have all the alterations finished. Then you'll need to find another seamstress. Renata has other priorities now. I could see the questions forming in Mrs. Kellerman's eyes, but I didn't wait for her to ask them. By tomorrow, the whole school would be buzzing with speculation about why Renata Ashford had suddenly abandoned her volunteer commitments. The DNA results arrived on Wednesday, exactly as promised. I opened the envelope in my truck outside the post office, even though I already knew what it would say. The baby was not mine. Probability of paternity, 0%. Gregory Holt was the biological father. Probability of paternity, 99.997%. I drove to Caroline's lawyer's office and handed her the results. She read them without expression, then filed them in a folder marked Holt, Caroline v. Gregory. This makes things simpler, she said. Gregory won't be able to claim any assets are needed for child support. The baby isn't his wife's responsibility. What about Renata? What about her? She's not my client. I mean, what happens to her? The lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Morse, shrugged. That's between her and Gregory. If she wants child support, she'll have to file her own paternity suit. I spent the rest of the week watching my old life disintegrate with methodical precision. Gregory resigned from the bank, citing personal reasons. Sloane stopped answering her phone and avoided her usual haunts around town. Renata had apparently moved in with her sister in Springfield, 30 miles away. Caroline filed for divorce on Friday, citing adultery and requesting dissolution of all marital assets. Massachusetts was a no-fault divorce state, but adultery still mattered when it came to property division. Gregory would be lucky to keep his car. That evening, I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the remnants of 12 years of marriage. Renata had taken her clothes and personal items, but everything else remained. The furniture we'd chosen together, the wedding photos on the mantel, the coffee maker that brewed 2 cups every morning out of habit. I should have felt victorious. I'd exposed the affair, destroyed the conspirators, and emerged with my dignity intact. Instead, I felt hollow, like a building after a controlled demolition, still standing, but gutted inside. My phone rang. Danny's name appeared on the display. "Boss? You okay? You've been acting weird all week." "I'm fine. Just dealing with some personal stuff." "Want to grab a beer? Talk about it?" I almost said yes. Danny was a good kid, loyal and honest. He'd listen without judgment and offer whatever support he could. But this wasn't the kind of problem that could be solved over beer and conversation. "Thanks, but I need to handle this myself. If you change your mind, I'll be at Murphy's until closing." After hanging up, I walked through the house, room by room, cataloging the damage. The guest bedroom where I'd been sleeping for months. The kitchen where Renata had cooked Gregory's favorite meals. The living room where we'd hosted dinner parties and game nights, playing at being a happy couple while she planned her next rendezvous with my sister's husband. In the master bedroom, I found something I'd missed during my earlier searches. A small jewelry box hidden in the back of Renata's closet. Inside were items I'd never seen before: a gold bracelet, a pair of diamond earrings, a hotel key card from the Riverside Inn. Gifts from Gregory. Tokens of their affair, hidden away like buried treasure. I threw the jewelry box in the trash and stripped the bed, stuffing the sheets and pillowcases into garbage bags. Then I opened all the windows, trying to air out the scent of betrayal that seemed to permeate every surface. By Saturday morning, I'd made a decision. The house held too many memories, too many reminders of a life that had been built on lies. I called a real estate agent and put it on the market. "Are you sure about this?" the agent asked. "It's a seller's market, but moving is stressful. Maybe you should wait until things settle down." "Things are settled. I just need a fresh start." The agent, a middle-aged woman named Ruth, nodded sympathetically. "Divorce?" "Something like that." Within a week, I had 3 offers above asking price. I accepted the highest one and began looking for a smaller place closer to the shop. Something without a dining room table that seated 8 or a master bedroom that echoed with broken promises. The closing was scheduled for the end of November. Until then, I lived like a ghost in my own house, sleeping in the guest room and eating takeout at the kitchen counter. I'd packed most of my belongings into boxes, leaving only the essentials. It was during this liminal period that Renata called. "Nate? It's me." Her voice sounded different, smaller, uncertain. The confident woman who'd planned elaborate dinner parties and managed volunteer committees had been replaced by someone who sounded lost. "What do you want, Renata?" "To talk. To explain." "There's nothing to explain. You had an affair with my sister's husband. You got pregnant. You lied about it. What else is there?" "I made a mistake. You made dozens of mistakes. Every text message, every secret meeting, every lie you told me, those were all mistakes." "I know. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix anything." "I'm scared, Nate. I don't know what to do." Despite everything, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Renata was 28 years old, pregnant, and facing single motherhood with a man who'd already proven he couldn't be trusted. "What about Gregory?" "He won't return my calls. I think he's planning to leave town." "Smart man." "Nate, please, can we meet, just to talk?" "No." "I'm still your wife." "No, you're not. You stopped being my wife the first time you met Gregory behind my back. The divorce papers just make it official." "I never filed for divorce." "I did. This morning. You'll be served next week." The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "I loved you," she said finally. "Maybe. But not enough." After I hung up, I sat in my empty living room and tried to remember what love felt like. Not the desperate passion Renata had felt for Gregory, but the steady, reliable love that builds marriages and families. I'd felt it once, I was sure, but it seemed as distant now as childhood, something that belonged to a different person in a different life. The DNA results were public record now, available to anyone who cared to look. The story had spread through Ashford like wildfire, the electrician whose pregnant wife had been cheating with her sister-in-law's husband. Some people expressed sympathy. Others whispered that I must have done something to drive her away. I didn't care what they whispered. The truth was more powerful than gossip, and the truth was on my side. But truth, I was learning, was a cold comfort when you were eating dinner alone every night and sleeping in a house that felt like a mausoleum. 3 weeks after putting the house on the market, I received an unexpected visitor. I was in the garage, organizing tools for the move, when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. Through the window, I saw a silver Mercedes, expensive, pristine, not the kind of car that usually visited my neighborhood. The woman who emerged was tall, elegant, wearing a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. She had steel gray hair pulled back in a perfect chignon and the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. I didn't recognize her until she spoke. "Mr. Ashford, I'm Victoria Holt, Gregory's mother." I'd heard about Victoria Holt but never met her. She lived in Boston, moved in circles that included museum boards and charity galas, and had never approved of Gregory's marriage to my blue-collar sister. Caroline had always been intimidated by her mother-in-law's wealth and sophistication. "Mrs. Holt, this is unexpected." "I'm sure it is. May I come in?" I led her through the garage into the kitchen, acutely aware of the takeout containers on the counter and the boxes stacked against the walls. Victoria Holt surveyed the scene with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to evaluating real estate. "I understand you're moving. Fresh start. Yes, I imagine you need one." She sat down at the kitchen table without being invited, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. "I've come to discuss my son's situation." "Your son's situation is his own fault. Nevertheless, it affects the entire family, including an innocent child." I poured myself coffee and offered her some, which she declined. "The child isn't my responsibility." "No, but it is Gregory's, and by extension mine." Victoria Holt reached into her purse and withdrew a leather portfolio. "I have a proposition for you." "I'm listening." "I want to buy your silence." I set down my coffee mug carefully. "Excuse me?" "This scandal has already damaged my family's reputation. Gregory has lost his job, Caroline is filing for divorce, and there's a child involved who will grow up bearing the stigma of this affair. I want to minimize further damage." "By buying my silence." "By compensating you for your discretion. In exchange for a substantial financial settlement, you agree not to discuss this matter publicly. No interviews with reporters, no social media posts, no gossip with neighbors." "How substantial?" She opened the portfolio and slid a document across the table. $250,000, tax-free, deposited into an account of your choosing. I read the document carefully. It was a non-disclosure agreement, professionally drafted and legally binding. In exchange for $250,000, I would agree never to discuss Gregory's affair with Renata, the paternity of the child, or any related matters. This is quite a lot of money for someone who doesn't want her family's dirty laundry aired in public. My family has a reputation to maintain. I have business interests that could be affected by scandal. What kind of business interests? I sit on several corporate boards. I chair 2 charitable foundations. I have investments in companies that value discretion and stability. A personal scandal involving my son could have far-reaching consequences. I leaned back in my chair, studying Victoria Holt's composed face. "You're not here because you're worried about gossip. You're here because you're worried about money." "I'm here because I want to protect my family's future, including the future of an innocent child who deserves better than to grow up as the subject of small-town scandal." "The child you're talking about is your grandchild?" "Yes, and I intend to provide for it regardless of the circumstances of its conception." "What about Renata? Is she part of this deal?" "Ms. Ashford will receive her own compensation package, contingent on similar discretion." "And Gregory?" "Gregory will do as he's told." The coldness in her voice suggested that Gregory's compliance wasn't optional. Victoria Holt was the kind of woman who solved problems with money and expected results. What happens if I refuse? Then you refuse. I can't force you to accept my offer. But you can make my life difficult if I don't. She smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Mr. Ashford, I have no interest in making your life difficult. I simply want to resolve this situation with minimal damage to all parties involved, including yourself. Including myself. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where I'd lived for 8 years. Mrs. Patterson was walking her dog again. The Hendersons were raking leaves. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that a woman worth millions was sitting in my kitchen trying to buy my silence about her son's affair. I need time to think about it. Of course, but I'll need an answer by Friday. And if I say no, then you say no. But consider this, Mr. Ashford, you're starting over. A new house, a new life, a chance to put this unpleasantness behind you. $250,000 could make that transition considerably easier. After Victoria Holt left, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the non-disclosure agreement. $250,000 to keep quiet about something everyone in town already knew. It seemed like easy money until I considered what I'd be giving up. My right to tell my story, my right to warn other men about Gregory's character, my right to ensure that Renata faced the full consequences of her actions. I called Caroline. Victoria Holt just left my house. Gregory's mother? What did she want? To buy my silence, $250,000 to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Caroline was quiet for a moment. That's a lot of money. It is. Are you going to take it? I don't know. What do you think? I think Victoria Holt doesn't offer that kind of money unless she's really worried about something. Maybe there's more to this story than we know. Like what? Like maybe Gregory has done this before. The thought had occurred to me, but I hadn't pursued it. Now, with Victoria Holt's offer on the table, it seemed worth investigating. How would we find out? I still have access to Gregory's computer. He never changed the passwords after I moved out. That's probably illegal. So is adultery. That evening, Caroline came over with her laptop. She'd logged into Gregory's email account and was scrolling through months of messages. Look at this, she said, pointing to an email from 6 months ago. It's from a woman named Jennifer Morrison. Thank you for last night. I can't wait to see you again. Who's Jennifer Morrison? I have no idea. But there are dozens of emails from her, going back almost 2 years. Caroline clicked on another message. I know you're married, but what we have is special. I'm willing to wait for you to figure things out. He was having an affair before Renata. Multiple affairs from the look of it. Caroline opened another email thread, this one from a woman named Susan Walsh. This goes back 3 years. We spent the next hour cataloging Gregory's infidelities. At least 5 different women, spanning 4 years of our marriage. Some relationships lasted months, others just a few weeks. All of them involved elaborate lies and careful scheduling to avoid detection. I was married to a serial cheater, Caroline said, her voice hollow. All those business trips, all those late nights at the office, he was building a catalog of affairs. Did you suspect? Never. I thought he was just dedicated to his career. I thought about Renata's pregnancy, about the timing that had seemed so convenient. Maybe Renata wasn't special. Maybe she was just next in line. Until she got pregnant. Until she got pregnant and forced his hand. Caroline closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair. This changes things, doesn't it? It changes everything. Victoria Holt isn't trying to protect her son from one scandal. She's trying to protect him from exposure as a habitual adulterer. What are you going to do? I looked at the non-disclosure agreement still sitting on my kitchen table. I'm going to decline Mrs. Holt's generous offer. And then? And then I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man Gregory Holt really is. The next morning, I called Victoria Holt's office and left a message declining her offer. Then I drove to the offices of the Ashford Gazette, the local weekly newspaper that covered everything from town council meetings to high school football games. The editor, a rumpled man named Bob Fitzgerald, listened to my story with growing interest. He'd known my family for years and had covered my father's passing and the transfer of the business to me. "This is quite a story," he said when I finished, "but I'll need documentation." I handed him copies of the DNA test results, the divorce filings, and selected email printouts that Caroline had provided. "Will this do?" Bob studied the documents carefully. "This'll do just fine. When do you want to run it?" "Next week's edition. Front page? If you think it merits it." Bob grinned. "Oh, it merits it. Local bank officers' affairs destroy 2 marriages. That's front page material in a town this size." The story ran the following Thursday, complete with photographs and a timeline of events. By Friday afternoon, everyone in Ashford knew that Gregory Holt had been conducting multiple affairs, that he'd fathered a child with his sister-in-law, and that his mother had tried to buy the victim's silence. My phone rang constantly, reporters from larger newspapers, friends offering support, acquaintances seeking details. I answered some calls and ignored others, but I didn't hide from the attention. On Saturday morning, I found Victoria Holt waiting in my driveway again. This time she looked less composed. Her perfect hair was slightly mussed, and there were lines of stress around her eyes. "You made a mistake, Mr. Ashford. I made a choice. You've destroyed my son's life. Your son destroyed his own life. I just made sure people knew about it. That newspaper story will follow him forever. Every time someone searches his name online, they'll find it. Good. Maybe it'll save some other woman the trouble of finding out what kind of man he is the hard way." Victoria Holt's composure finally cracked. "You have no idea what you've done. Gregory is my only child, my only family. Then you should have raised him to be a better man." She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something like recognition in her eyes. "You're not going to be satisfied with destroying Gregory, are you?" "I'm satisfied with telling the truth." "What about Renata? Are you going to destroy her too?" "Renata destroyed herself. I'm just making sure she doesn't get away with it." Victoria Holt got back in her Mercedes and drove away without another word. I never saw her again, but I heard through Caroline that she'd moved Gregory to Florida, where he was working at a small credit union under an assumed name. The house sold 2 weeks later. I moved into a small apartment above Murphy's Tavern, close enough to the shop that I could walk to work. It wasn't much, 2 rooms and a kitchenette, but it was mine, and it had no memories of Renata or Gregory, or the life I'd thought I was living. Caroline's divorce was finalized in December. She kept the house, the cars, and Gregory's retirement fund. She also kept the evidence of his affairs in case he ever tried to claim visitation rights to the child. Renata gave birth to a daughter on February 15th, 1 day late, but close enough to the predicted date to confirm the DNA results. She named the baby Grace, which struck me as ironic. There had been precious little grace in the circumstances of the child's conception. I never met Grace, never saw Renata again after our last phone conversation. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was struggling financially, working part-time at a department store while trying to raise a baby alone. Gregory sent child support payments sporadically, when he remembered or when his mother forced him to. The scandal faded from local conversation after a few months, replaced by new gossip and fresh drama. But I didn't forget, and I didn't forgive. Some betrayals are too fundamental to overlook, too destructive to excuse. Spring arrived early that year, bringing with it a restlessness I couldn't shake. My new life had settled into a routine: work at the shop, dinner at Murphy's, solitary evenings in my apartment above the bar. It was peaceful, predictable, and utterly empty of purpose. Then, Danny brought me news that changed everything. "Boss, you're not going to believe this," he said, bursting into the shop on a Tuesday morning in March. "Gregory Holt is back in town." I looked up from the invoice I was reviewing. "That's impossible. He moved to Florida. I saw him myself, at the grocery store, buying baby formula." "Baby formula?" "Yeah, and he looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in weeks." I set down the invoice and gave Danny my full attention. "What else did you see?" "He was with some woman I didn't recognize. Blonde, maybe 30, looked expensive. They were arguing about something." "Did you hear what they were arguing about?" "Something about money. The woman kept saying he needed to step up and take responsibility. Gregory looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole." That afternoon, I drove past Gregory's old house, the one Caroline had kept in the divorce. A moving truck was parked in the driveway, and I could see furniture being loaded onto it. Caroline was supervising the process, directing the movers with the efficiency of someone eager to erase the past. I pulled into the driveway and got out of my truck. "Moving?" I asked. Caroline turned, and I was struck by how much she'd changed. She'd lost weight, cut her hair short, and there was a hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "New job in Hartford. Fresh start." "Good for you." I heard Gregory's back in town. "So did I. Any idea why?" "His mother cut him off. Apparently she found out about the other affairs and decided he was too much of a liability. He's broke, unemployed, and desperate." "What about the woman Danny saw him with?" Caroline's smile was sharp as a blade. "That would be Jennifer Morrison. Remember her from the emails? Turns out she's been supporting Gregory since he lost his job, but now she's pregnant too." The news hit me like a physical blow. "Pregnant?" "4 months along. Gregory's been busy since he left Massachusetts." "Does Renata know?" "I doubt it. She's been living in her own little world, playing single mother and waiting for Gregory to come back and rescue her." I helped Caroline load the last of her boxes into her car. She was leaving that afternoon, driving to Connecticut to start her new life as a marketing director for an insurance company. "What about Gregory?" I asked. "Are you just going to let him walk away from everything he's done?" "He's not walking away from anything. He's trapped. 2 pregnant women, no job, no money, and a reputation that follows him everywhere he goes. That's punishment enough." But it wasn't punishment enough for me. Gregory had destroyed 2 marriages, fathered children he couldn't support, and caused pain that would ripple through generations. He deserved consequences that matched the scope of his crimes. After Caroline left, I drove to the address Danny had given me, a rundown motel on the outskirts of town where Gregory was apparently staying. The Sunset Motor Lodge had seen better days, probably sometime in the 1970s. The parking lot was cracked asphalt and weeds, and half the neon sign was burned out. I found Gregory's room and knocked on the door. "Who is it?" The voice was muffled, suspicious. "Nate Ashford." The silence stretched so long I thought he might not answer. Then the door opened, revealing a man who barely resembled the confident bank officer I'd known. Gregory had lost at least 20 pounds. His hair was unwashed and unkempt, and his clothes looked like he'd been sleeping in them. "What do you want?" "To talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "We have plenty to talk about. Jennifer Morrison, for one thing." Gregory's face went pale. "How do you know about Jennifer?" "Small town. Word gets around. Can I come in?" He stepped aside reluctantly, and I entered a room that smelled of cigarettes and desperation. The bed was unmade, fast food containers littered the small table, and empty beer bottles lined the windowsill. "Nice place," I said. "It's temporary." "Everything's temporary with you, isn't it? Jobs, relationships, responsibilities." Gregory sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. "What do you want, Nate?" "I want to understand how one man can cause so much damage and feel so little remorse." "You think I don't feel remorse? I think about what I've done every day." "Do you?" Do you think about Caroline crying herself to sleep every night for months? Do you think about Renata struggling to raise your daughter alone? Do you think about the child Jennifer's carrying, who'll grow up with a father who can't even support himself? I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. And now you're here, hiding in a motel room, hoping everyone will just forget about the mess you've made. Gregory looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What do you want me to do? I can't change what happened. No. But you can face the consequences like a man instead of running away like a coward. I'm not running away. Aren't you? You left town after the scandal broke. You've been avoiding child support payments. You're hiding from Jennifer, from Renata, from everyone who has a legitimate claim on your attention. I don't have any money. My mother cut me off. I can't get a job, and I'm barely surviving on what Jennifer gives me. Then get a job, any job. Stock shelves, flip burgers, clean offices. Do whatever it takes to support the children you fathered. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You made choices, Gregory. Now live with them. I left him sitting on that motel room bed, staring at the wall like it might provide answers to questions he was afraid to ask. But I wasn't done with Gregory Holt. Not even close. The next morning, I called Jennifer Morrison. I'd gotten her number from Caroline, who'd found it in Gregory's old phone records. Jennifer answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. Hello? Ms. Morrison? This is Nate Ashford. I think we need to talk. I don't know any Nate Ashford. I'm Gregory Holt's former brother-in-law, the husband of the woman he got pregnant last year. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. What do you want? She asked finally. To meet, to discuss our mutual problem. Gregory isn't a problem. He's a serial adulterer who's fathered children with at least 2 women in the past year. If you don't consider that a problem, you're more naive than I thought. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in the next town over, neutral territory where we were unlikely to be recognized. Jennifer Morrison turned out to be exactly what I'd expected. Attractive, well-dressed, and desperately trying to maintain the illusion that her relationship with Gregory was somehow different from all his others. Gregory loves me, she said after I'd explained the situation. What happened with your wife was a mistake. What happened with my wife was part of a pattern. Gregory has been cheating on his spouses for years. You're just the latest in a long line of women who thought they were special. You're lying. I pulled out copies of the emails Caroline had printed, the ones documenting Gregory's various affairs. Jennifer read them with growing horror, her face growing paler with each page. He told me he'd never done anything like this before, she whispered. Gregory tells every woman what she wants to hear. That's his talent. But I'm pregnant. We're planning to get married. Are you? Has he proposed, set a date, introduced you to his family? Jennifer's silence was answer enough. He's using you, I continued. Just like he used Renata, just like he used Caroline. You're providing him with money and shelter while he figures out his next move. What next move? Running away again. Disappearing before the baby is born, before he has to face the reality of supporting another child. Jennifer was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streams. What am I supposed to do? Stop supporting him. Stop enabling his behavior. Make him face the consequences of his actions. But if I throw him out, where will he go? That's not your problem. You're not responsible for Gregory's choices, but you are responsible for your own. I left Jennifer sitting in that coffee shop, staring at the evidence of Gregory's serial infidelity. Whether she would act on what she'd learned remained to be seen, but at least she could no longer claim ignorance. 2 days later, I got my answer. Danny saw Gregory at the bus station, buying a ticket to somewhere far away. He had one suitcase and the desperate look of a man running out of options. Did you see where he was going? I asked. California, I think. Los Angeles. Alone? Yeah, Jennifer wasn't with him. So Gregory was running again, abandoning his responsibilities and leaving others to clean up his mess. But this time, I wasn't going to let him disappear quietly. I called the Ashford Gazette and spoke to Bob Fitzgerald. I have an update on the Gregory Holt story. What kind of update? He's back in town, got another woman pregnant, and now he's fleeing to California to avoid child support obligations. That's news. Can you prove it? I can prove all of it. The follow-up story ran the next week, complete with photographs of Gregory at the bus station and quotes from Jennifer Morrison about their relationship. The headline read, "Serial Adulterer Flees Town, Leaves Trail of Broken Families." This time, the story was picked up by larger newspapers and news websites. Gregory's name became permanently associated with terms like deadbeat dad and serial cheater. Any future employer who searched his name would find a detailed history of his infidelities and irresponsibility. But I still wasn't satisfied. Gregory was gone, but the damage he'd caused remained. Renata was struggling to raise his daughter alone. Jennifer was facing single motherhood with no support system. Caroline had rebuilt her life, but the scars of betrayal would never fully heal. Then I had an idea. I called Victoria Holt's office and asked to speak with her directly. Her secretary tried to brush me off, but I was persistent. "Tell her it's about her granddaughters," I said. Plural. Victoria called me back within an hour. "What do you want now, Mr. Ashford?" "To discuss your family responsibilities." "I have no responsibilities to you." "Not to me, to your granddaughters, the ones your son abandoned." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Gregory has 2 daughters now, Renata's baby and Jennifer Morrison's unborn child. Both of them need support, and Gregory has fled the state to avoid providing it." "That's not my concern." "Isn't it? You tried to buy my silence to protect your family's reputation. Now your son has created an even bigger scandal, and there are innocent children involved." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want me to do?" "Be a grandmother. Provide for the children your son won't support." "Why would I do that?" "Because it's the right thing to do. And because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows that Victoria Holt abandoned her own granddaughters to protect her precious reputation." "You're blackmailing me." "I'm offering you a chance to do the right thing for once." 3 weeks later, I received a call from Renata. Her voice was different, stronger, more confident than I'd heard in months. "Nate, I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "Victoria Holt contacted me. She's setting up trust funds for Grace and Jennifer's baby. Full college tuition, plus monthly support payments until they're 18. "That's good news." "She said you convinced her to do it." "I pointed out her responsibilities. She made the choice. Either way, thank you. Grace will have opportunities I never could have given her alone." After hanging up, I sat in my apartment above Murphy's Tavern and considered what I'd accomplished. The sounds of the bar drifted up through the floorboards. Low voices, the clink of glasses, muted laughter, reminders that life was continuing all around me, whether I felt part of it or not. Gregory was in exile, his reputation destroyed, and his future prospects limited. His name had become shorthand for deception, a cautionary tale whispered instead of spoken aloud. His victims were receiving the support they deserved, finally believed, finally heard. Justice, of a sort, had been served. But the victory felt hollow. I'd spent months orchestrating Gregory's downfall, calculating every move, every disclosure, every consequence. And for what? My marriage was still over, reduced to paperwork and memories I didn't revisit. My sister had moved away to start fresh, taking with her the last piece of family that had anchored me to Ashford. The life I'd built there, the routines, the familiar faces, the sense of belonging, was gone, replaced by a solitary existence above a bar where I fell asleep to closing time and woke up to delivery trucks. The next morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. It wasn't dramatic or emotional. It was quiet, almost mundane. I called a real estate agent and asked her to find me a house. Not an apartment, not a temporary solution, not another place to hide while time passed, but a real home where I could put down roots and build something new. "What kind of house?" she asked, professional curiosity edging into genuine interest. "Something with good bones," I said after a moment. "Something that can be fixed up and made beautiful again." Even as I said it, I realized I wasn't just talking about a building. She found me a Victorian house on Maple Street, built in 1890 and neglected for decades. The kind of place most people drove past without slowing down. The roof leaked, the plumbing was ancient, and the electrical system was a fire hazard waiting to happen. Windows rattled, floors sagged, and the paint peeled in long, tired strips. But the structure was solid, and I could see its potential beneath the decay. I could see myself in it. I bought it for cash and spent the next 6 months rebuilding it from the inside out. I stripped it down to studs and joists, learned its history through scars and shortcuts left by generations before me. New wiring, new plumbing, new roof, fresh paint on every surface. It was hard work, physically exhausting, mentally demanding, but satisfying in a way that revenge had never been. At the end of each day, progress was tangible. You could point to it, measure it. Danny helped with the renovation, learning skills that would serve him well when he eventually took over Ashford Electrical. We worked mostly in silence, radios off, focused on the task in front of us. But it was comfortable silence, the kind that comes from shared purpose and mutual respect. No explanations needed, no old wounds reopened. "You know," Danny said one afternoon as we installed new kitchen cabinets, wiping sawdust from his hands, "you seem different lately." "Different how?" I asked, checking the level again. "Happier. More like yourself." I considered that as I measured the space for the next cabinet, the tape snapping back into place. "Maybe I'm finally figuring out something important," I said, "who I am without all the anger." "You had a right to be angry," he said immediately. "I did," I agreed. "But anger's a tool, not a lifestyle. You use it to fix what's broken, then you put it away and move on." The house was finished by Christmas. Snow dusted the street, lights appeared in windows up and down Maple, and the place finally felt warm in a way that had nothing to do with heating. I hosted a small celebration for the crew who'd helped with the renovation. Danny, a few subcontractors, some neighbors who'd brought coffee and encouragement during the long months of work. People who'd shown up without being asked. As I stood in my new living room, surrounded by people who'd become friends through shared labor and common purpose, I realized something important. Revenge had given me justice, but rebuilding had given me peace. Gregory Holt was yesterday's problem, a chapter in my life that was finished and filed away. He no longer occupied space in my thoughts. The man I'd become, stronger, wiser, more careful with trust, but not cynical about love, was today's reality. And for the first time in over a year, that reality felt like enough. Standing there in my restored house, watching Danny explain electrical theory to one of the neighbors with the confidence of someone who knew his craft, I understood that the best revenge wasn't destruction, it was reconstruction. Building something better from the ruins of what had been broken. Creating a life so full and purposeful that the people who'd tried to destroy it became irrelevant footnotes in a much larger story. The Ashford devastation was complete, but not in the way I'd originally planned. Instead of leaving a wasteland of ruined lives, I'd cleared the ground for something new to grow. And in that cleared space, I'd found not just justice, but redemption. The last thing I did that night, after the guests had gone home and the house was quiet, was to take down the last reminder of my old life. A wedding photo I'd kept in a box, forgotten until now. I looked at it once, remembering the hope and promise it had represented, then threw it in the fireplace and watched it burn. Some things needed to be destroyed completely before anything new could take their place. But once the destruction was complete, once the ground was cleared and the foundation was solid, you could build something that would last. And that's exactly what I intended to do.